and welcome to our webinar, Circle Strategies, Upskilling, Selling Your Personal Brand. I'm CEO of Circle Strategies, Clifford Watkin, and I'm joined today with Jordan Murphy, who's the founder and CEO of brainapes.com. Jordan has an incredible background in branding, and I've asked him to join me today for this great conversation on how you as an individual in the workplace looking for a new job, whether you're working in an existing organization and transitioning to another department, or whether you're deciding to look for another role at another organization, we both of us recognize that having a brand today is really important and critical for when you're looking for a job. And having that brand and identifying that brand is a tough road to hoe. And also, it's important that you learn how to sell that brand because getting a job today is very different than it was 5, even 10 years ago. So today, both of us are going to explore some different paths around creating your brand and selling your brand. But before we get started, Jordan, tell me a little bit about you and your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everyone. And Cliff, thank you so much for having me. Excited to dive in and really share my experience from hitting multiple glass ceilings in different careers to really deciding to go into business for myself and get really intentional about the life that I wanted to live and what I wanted out of a career. And that, for me, landed myself into building a lifestyle business. And I now share that journey, walking people from having the job to having the life, the freedom, and the business that they aspire to have.
So tell me how you found out about this lifestyle business. It was kind of a little bit of an interesting journey for you, I understand.
Yeah. So I mean, it really, in its heart of hearts, it was realizing that I was capable of more. I love to learn. I've come to realize I'm a lifelong learner. And so with that, when I stop learning in my career, it kind of pushes me to do more or find more. What I realized was through a journey of personal progress and development was really that the clearer you are about what you want, then you can ask yourself the right questions. And I say it all the time, the better the question, the better the answer. So what I found was by asking myself the right questions, being really clear about what I did want, and part of that was also deciding what I didn't want. So I did have to go through the doing and have the careers and experience and ultimately find that there were things that were, I guess you could say, non-negotiables. And that was where I then had to figure out the lifestyle piece.
And that was when you were at Northeast Alternatives, right? Where you were in a corporate role, helping an organization grow, be very, very successful. And then you had that moment of asking those questions, right?
Yeah, that was probably honestly iteration number 3. I tried the entrepreneurial thing multiple times, and for various reasons, it had failed. I can look back now and see very clearly why I sent the thing off the rails or why I never even got it on the rails. Just funny life synchronicities though that pushed me, to Northeast Alternatives, and that was really where I had the big crux of. I've now got such a role that touches so many things. I'm not sure there's anything in business that I don't have enough of a capacity to do myself. So why don't I go and build something? Was
Mm-hmm.
kind of where after that journey or during that journey.
Excellent. Well, we're excited to explore that with you today. We're going to spend some time figuring out how to create your personal brand, how it impacts you in career development. We're going to spend some time focusing on job interviews and how to best position yourself and what does selling mean in a job interview. We're also going to talk about practically what are some things you have to do to come up with your brand and how do you identify what that is. And then when you're working within an organization, how do you present that brand? Because sometimes the brand can be not well appreciated if you present it the wrong way. So let's jump right into it. My first question to talk about is you've emphasized throughout your career the importance of brand and why that helps you be successful, whether you're selling a coffee cup or whether you're selling yourself in a job. How can individuals identify and communicate their unique personal brand effectively? And that's the key word, I think, in the question, effectively in the market. Because many of us can take online courses, get coached on how to create the brand, but how do you effectively use it in the marketplace, the job marketplace?
Yeah, it's a great question, and everything boils down to your fundamentals in building the foundation, right? So it's foundational to start by recognizing that you have a personal brand. It's not something that's told to us. We're not made aware of marketing
It's not in our
ourselves.
culture. It's not in our
No,
culture.
right? Yeah, it's like, but we all do have a brand, right? And we all are surrounded by brands all day long, 24/7. And to prove that we all have a personal brand, it's what everyone says, thinks, and believes about you, just like the associations that you make with the brands that you love or maybe don't love. So starting with clarity and really defining what you want is always ground zero. And that's where a lot of times, if you aren't intentional, then you're unintentional, but you're still making those decisions, whether you realize it or not. And so
And
once you start to find those behaviors and actions that align with your ambitions, then you can start to take the right intentional steps.
and what are some tips and tools that you would share with the audience about finding clarity? Because there's a lot of noise out there today. We're distracted in so many different ways by other brands, by work, by family, by friends, by social media. What are some tips that you recommend for finding clarity?
Oh, goodness. As a daily practice, am I doing this for myself or someone else? Is a
Mhm.
great question. Of um, if you're looking at really like mind mapping this thing out and trying to get absolutely clear, I personally love to break out a notebook and just go down and again, right? Better the question, better the answer. Ask yourself meaningfully what it is that you want out of this life, right? What are the things that are your non-negotiables? And for a lot of people that I help with this exercise, a thing that I see constantly is, I don't know. Well, it's like, well, then tell me what you don't want, because I'm sure you can give me a half-hour long rant right now of everything you hate about the current state,
Yeah.
right? Start there, write those things down, and then invert them, right? It's a powerful exercise from a position of manifesting without kind of going too deep down the hole there. It's like the universe doesn't understand negatives, right? What you don't want is still getting all of the attention. And so if you imagine throwing a lasso out into the future and you're pulling this thing to you all the time, whether you realize it or not, then what the attention is on is what you're pulling in. So you want to take that negative list and invert it to what it then means, what you actually do want.
After you find clarity, and that's a difficult task, I get it. What would be the next tool that people should focus on?
Mm, that's awesome. I mean, it's one thing to have clarity, it's another thing to start acting on it, right? And
Hmm.
that's, I think, where a big part of misalignment can happen, because if you don't practice the awareness, and this is really the answer, is awareness, right? If you don't practice the awareness and audit your actions, audit your behavior, right? Recognize what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and holding that accountable to the list that you decided for yourself. Having that awareness and revisiting that and coming back to this is the practice, really. Like, this is the big practice, because you recognize not only now your actions, but you recognize your emotional state. You recognize the place that you're creating from, right? If we're feeling fearful, if we're feeling doubtful, those are the things that are going to pull us backward to the old bad habits, the unconscious programming, the things that we associated with ourselves and pulled into our identity over time without even realizing it, right? So if you want something different than what you have right now, you have to behave differently. Having clarity is great, but then you have to actually go and be different in order to actually achieve of a different
And
outcome.
I think another word that you mentioned that's really, really critical is being accountable. Because sometimes we do over time go through a reflection process and we say, I don't like that behavior of myself, or I want to change this. And then we go ahead and change it. But sometimes we fall back into it. And you're absolutely right. Learning the way to be accountable to yourself specifically can help you specifically identify your personal brand. Tell us a little bit about your story and how you figured out your personal brand and how you went through that exercise of saying, I need to find clarity in what I'm doing every day. And this is what I'm going to do to change. And how did it change?
Mm. I will do my darn best to compress this and be super concise, because I could run for hours on that one and give you a recap of the past decade. So the fast and dirty is, I did this exercise going into Northeast Alternatives. So right before Northeast Alternatives, I had a health and wellness business, holistic weight loss. I was fundamentally teaching people about fasting and doing like a low carb lifestyle, ketogenic lifestyle. That had led into doing meal preps and just natural problem solution loop. Solve a problem. Now there's a new problem. Let's solve that next problem for our audience and just keep building. Well, my little Italian Greyhound, I'm a dog dad of 5, and my little Italian Greyhound had broken his leg at the same time that my wife was going back to school for her RN. And so I had to make a hard decision, and it was pretty much to kind of close up shop. I mean, I still did the coaching on the side, but I really just couldn't fully invest in it. So my time and energy needed to go somewhere. I was like, well, I want to stay in the helping people space, and I want to continue to stay around like this sharing unconventional and
Sorry about
teach dog dads. You're good. I'll keep on running with it. And so at that point, I had to really like decide, where do I want to go? And for me, I was in Massachusetts at the time. Cannabis was a new and evolving industry. And now I've got one going. See what happened here? So going into cannabis was a hot prospect for me. I had just helped a friend leverage LinkedIn. I built his profile. I'd done some backdooring, got him connected with the C-suite, got them going in a Gmail email conversation, landed him an interview. It was on him then to close the deal, and he did just that. He went there, he sold himself, he got hired. So he's rolling through. He tells me like, hey, the onboarding's a bit dicey. There's not really much training and development going on. Like, it was kind of just like an onboarding, and then we got thrown into the mix. Okay, like I can run with that. Like, I was the head of training and development for an organization of 180 people prior, a couple years back. And so I then start to kind of run the same bit. I got an intro. I talked to the VP of retail. I'm like, hey, I can come in and do this for you guys. I can help you. He's like, well, we're kind of still a startup. Like, we don't really have that spot yet. Maybe in a few months. I was like, I'll come in. I'll learn your business. I'll do everything. I'll learn every position. I know all of the high level stuff. I just need to know the nuances of how your organization functions. Right. So I came in just being a sponge. He was like, all right. And I was like, I need to obviously earn like the best possible income. He was like, well, then you got to go be a bud tender. So you got to go on the sales floor. You got to go sell pot. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, so that actually was fun for me, because I went onto the medical side. I'd already been doing health and wellness coaching. Right. So it was like, I was able to go beyond the scope of just the regular talking about the product. It was like, this is really fun for me. But I started going and doing all kinds of stuff. I was in every different department picking up shifts and uncovered some needs. I took on some higher level projects as just a random person. I got noticed by the COO. He texted me one day and he's like, hey, are you at the shop? I said, yeah. He's like, hey, I'm pulling up. I'm going to jump in my car. We're going to go grab lunch. He pulls up, fancy sports car. I get in. Like, now this is my first taste of like, wow, this is the lifestyle, right? And like, this is what's possible. So it kind of got me all like jazzed up, and I go to Starbucks. We sit it down, and it turned into an interview. I wasn't expecting. That then turned into, I got pulled up, and I basically worked alongside him for the next 4 years as pretty much the Swiss Army knife, doing marketing, branding. We became the most awarded dispensary in the state, 8 award-winning brands, grew into a multi-state operator, all during COVID. It was during that time I was remote. I took advantage of that. What was cool was at the start of that exercise, and this is to answer your question full swing here. At the start of determining where I wanted to go, I did this exercise and I wrote it on paper. And it looked crazy. If you looked at it, it was like $250,000 a year, and I want to work remotely, and all of these different things that you couldn't back in 2020 or 2019, you couldn't even see a clear path for. No. Right. And I'm just like, but you know what? I'm going to set the intention, and I'm going to not worry about, I'm just going to show up. I'm going to keep doing it and believe that if I just stay clear about my intention and I stay on this path, that miracles will form. And this was my like early start of like seeing manifesting actually come to fruition. It was like, by damn, now I'm not realizing most of my things here are coming to fruition. And then it became clear where the things that weren't going to be through this vehicle. And that was where I was like, okay, like if I want to stay remote, like let's commit to this. Moving to Florida was like an easy and difficult decision. I was like, I'm going to sell my house now in Massachusetts. I'm going to move down here. and adopt this vacation mindset and
Mhm.
really like untether myself from what is conventionally believed. I remember my dad at the time being like, it's okay to just have a job, right? He's a police officer, been on the job for 20 something years, like total dedicated career, man. And I'm like, Dad, I don't think that's for me,
Yeah.
And that then evolved the exercise though, because then I had to be clear toward the end of that tenure, what do I want then?
Right.
Right.
You
And
needed clarity.
exactly. And this is the thing is you keep leveling up, you keep having that awareness, you keep doing the practice, the things come, the achievements flow. And then you have to keep rewriting and redefining the next new version of you.
And the cool thing about what you did was you had this internal accountability to make sure you answered that question and didn't just keep saying or pushing it down the road, saying, I'm not sure, or I kind of like this. You made sure that I'm going to figure it out.
And
Awesome.
imagining so much bigger.
Say that
Yeah.
again.
I said, and imagining so much bigger, like
Yeah.
not being limited by what I've seen around me. I was starting to see things I'd never seen before. Executives coming into the office wearing board shorts and flip flops. Like, it was just challenging all paradigms. Like this,
Sure.
anything's possible, clearly. So like, what would it be if I could have literally anything I want?
That's great. And so you were able to transition out of there and you figured out what your brand should be. And your brand is helping people figure out what's the right lifestyle or work balance or whatever word you want to use right for them. So the next question is related to your story, which was a great story. What are some of the mistakes that people make in trying to figure out their personal brand? What are some of the things that you've seen with some of the people you've worked with? What are some of the things that you've coached them on to try and avoid those mistakes? Tell me a little bit about what you've seen.
Hmm. The big three. Um, Back to the question before, right? Number one, just not recognizing that you have a personal brand,
Yeah.
and that the force, consciously or unconsciously, and so it's either being developed with intention or unintentionally. So number one is really recognizing that you do have a personal brand, regardless if you're doing this social media thing and you're creating content, or that's completely irrelevant from this. Everyone has a personal brand. So getting someone to believe that first and foremost is the
Mhm.
first part. And oftentimes it comes by using myself as an example and saying, hey, there are things that think, and believe about me, right? And you formed your own opinions about me, and it's why you felt comfortable to get on this call today,
Mhm.
right? And so that's oftentimes the very first thing is I'm teaching through the application and what I've already brought them through, right? And then even bringing it to other conversations of like, you know, their favorite brands, what they love about them,
Mhm.
right? And just proving that out and just saying, hey, well, look at the means of what happened. They advertised, they made something known, and then what they made known became their brand. The things that you associated with, that you liked, that you believed, and relate to things that you like, know, and believe personally as well. So it's creating those connections. Number two is they build it based on their wants and desires. They really
Mhm.
don't think enough about the opposite side of the spectrum, their audience. And so like this I see all the time in the online world. It presents as a symptom of really not having done market research. And whether that's you're selling something, a tangible product or a service, or you're selling yourself, to a prospective employer, like
Mhm.
you make it impossible for them to pick you if you don't understand them. Because at the end of the day, that's what's happening with a sale is a transfer of belief that this thing or this person is the right fit, they are the solution, they are going to get it done for me.
Yep.
And the better that you understand who you're selling to, the more that you can get them to believe that and get them to walk across that hallway of belief transfer. And the powerful thing about the branding is the better the branding, the more you're able to shorten that walkway into a threshold.
Mhm.
You can get somebody to have to just walk through a doorway rather than walk through a whole hallway. It's the
Yep.
essence of getting somebody into an interview where they already like you so much because of the preceding communications, what they were able to learn about you, and your tact and all of that. That then leads them to literally be like, I already think I got the one. I think this is going to be the one. I just got to ask some questions and make sure, right?
Sure.
If I'm talking about a job offer, same thing goes for a sale. I've spent $5,000, $10,000 here or there because someone's got me I literally just have a couple of clarifying questions. You don't even have to sell me. I jump into the call link. You don't even have to sell me. I'm already in. I just need to know
Exactly.
how this fits, this bit functions.
So I think what you're suggesting in terms of when people are making mistakes through your explanation is that when you're looking for a job, it's really important that the organization that's looking at you understands your brand, who you are, what are you bringing to the table, and so therefore you have to clearly articulate that and present it and market it. So what's interesting in that is when you do finally get the job, you have a brand, and now you have to make sure that that brand within the organization fits. And so just to talk about this in a little bit of a broader picture, uh, every organization has individuals who do different things and act certain ways and have certain likes and have different dislikes, and how you manage those within the organization is really important, because you could have personal beliefs and that makes up your brand, right? Your personal belief about, I like Louis Vuitton, or no, I don't like Louis Vuitton. My personal brand is Gap or Walmart, or whatever product it is you're buying. That's representing who you are as a personal brand. But we also have to be careful about how we present that brand in the workplace. Now, I'm pointing this out specifically because of what you said in the sales process. Uh, if we articulate what the sales process is for getting a job, it is identifying who you are on LinkedIn. So you've got to put your brand there. You have to identify who you are in your resume, and your resume has to say who you are and how you present yourself. Then there's the cover letter and the emails that go back and forth in terms of how you're getting yourself along the path to the interview. And then you get into the interview and you've got to talk about who you are and your brand and so on and so forth. And so those are all the different steps that you alluded to with regards to the sales cycle of how you're selling yourself today. So when you're talking about that and you're talking about selling yourself, I think in our conversations you have explained to me how authenticity is probably the strongest way for you to sell yourself. And I think you have a personal story about how you authentically sold yourself to get your job at your last organization, where you said, I'll literally do whatever I need to get the job. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you chose that path to say, this is who I am, take it or leave it, and why you chose that path as opposed to saying, I think I really like marketing. I want to go and do marketing for the organization.
mm, this is awesome. Because if you remember, if we take it back, what I said was identified a problem first that I could solve by talking to my buddy who I helped get in there. He identified that the onboarding wasn't keen, right? He didn't like it. It was like very much a blessed by fire type of environment. And I took that as my opportunity to showcase the skills, right? I showcased my understanding. I brought a solution to their problem, whether or not they were even aware of that problem, right? And that was the first step, was really understanding where they were at and who I was going to serve. And I had already done some legwork, right? Because I already knew this. I wanted to go here. I liked this organization because in the process of helping my buddy fire up his LinkedIn and actually be able to connect with the C-suite, I first off had to network actually with people who are in the organization at a lower level. And so I was able to pierce the veil there by getting connected with them first, striking up conversation. And that's where you can get an internal advocate. That's where you can have, they say like it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. Well,
Yep.
become friends with people who can become resources as well. It's not a shallow thing, right? It's like genuinely you want to become a colleague with them if in fact you determine that this place is a good fit for you. And so having an open conversation with people ahead of time and trying to uncover what are the positives, what are the negatives beyond the Glassdoor review, where
Mhm.
someone was so held because they were either internally drinking the Kool-Aid and they were asked to go leave the review and boost the ratings, or somebody was so opposite spectrum, unhappy that they had to go and tell the world about it, right? And there's everybody in between who you never hear from. Go talk to those people, because they're going to tell you what's going on. They are the fly on the wall. They've got the tea and they're ready to spill it. So when you get the tea, you then have the problems. And if you are in a position to bring the solutions, then you can go and you can do that in a manner that is more about them and less about you.
Yeah.
And so, that authenticity, that comes through naturally in that process, because you're coming from a place of credibility and you're leading with a solution first.
And we talked earlier about finding clarity and being able to explain that clarity of who you are and what you want. That really comes through in the interview process of you as who you are as an individual, and it becomes less about you and more about the organization and how you can support and do a good job in the organization. Before we jump to the next question, I just want to make sure that the audience knows that if you have any questions that you want to ask either of us, just please put them in the private chat and share your comments, and we'll be happy to answer them. So we've been talking about the interview process, and what I want to do is make sure that we are clear that the interview process is also a sales process, and how you prepare and how you prepare for that sales meeting or that interview meeting is really, really important. How you present yourself in that process. And what I want to ask Jordan is, how do you leverage that mindset that you're building, that clarity mindset? How do you leverage that in the interview process? What should you be doing, and how should you be thinking and presenting yourself when you've figured out who you are and what your brand should be, and how should you present it?
Mm. Yeah, and I'm biased toward the sales analogy because I train sales so heavily, and in understanding like how it's fundamentally it's a connection, right? And then it's a transfer of belief, and it's really relationship building one-on-one at its core. It's just with intention, right? A sale is just conversation with intention. You're trying to bring a solution that you may have to a problem that someone else may have. And so generally it's get to know the person, understand where, what they're all about, what's going on in their world, and then being able to work that backwards into where you're positioned, right? What are your resources? What makes you uniquely positioned to solve this? You either solved this problem before, or you're versatile and willing to learn. It's, everybody is on a different degree of spectrum in terms of how advanced they are in their skills. And it doesn't mean don't shoot for the moon, but also recognize that you do need to be able to deliver on what promises you make. And that's where the authenticity comes from. Come from a place of, I've been here and done this before. I've walked this road, and I've helped people just like you get to exactly where you want to go. I mean, that's a lot of confidence that comes with that. And so there's a season where you do need to be real with yourself. You do need to learn. You do need to understand that, there are nuances, and I think it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, if I'm not mistaken, where it's, the more that you learn, the more that you learn about something, the more you realize you know nothing. So, with an interview, it's just a transfer of belief that you're the right person for the role. So it's understanding that, what goes into a great sale is really all of what makes the difference. It's, candidly, share this with you. Every job that I've ever applied for and gotten an interview for, I've received an offer. The reason is because I prepare for the sale. First off, I love the product I'm selling. That's me, right? That makes the conviction and the confidence part easy. It's like, I believe in myself. I'll do anything that you need me to do. I have the competency, the wherewithal, the adaptability, the resourcefulness. And I understand that they want people who are autonomous learners and self-starters. Nobody doesn't want that. And so to say that differently, everybody wants that. Second off is, I love the problem that I'm solving. And that means that I intimately understand the cause and effect relationship between what I do and will bring to the company, and what that then means for them in terms of their goals and objectives, right? So what the company stands to gain. And the third bit and the final piece here is, I don't sell to everyone, right? Not everyone is my customer. I'm not going to go to every person and try to sell for brain aid. I'm not going to go to any company and apply. right? I want to go where I can best serve. And so I want to go where the culture abides to my standards of excellence as well.
Mhm.
Where we can both work and walk together.
So you've told me this before, when we first started speaking, that every job you applied for, you got. So that's incredible. I think that's a huge accomplishment. But I'm also looking for a little bit more skills transfer or specifics that worked for you in those interviews that we could share with the audience. So when you were, let's just focus on two main components: preparing for the interview. What did you do to prepare for all of those interviews that made it so successful? And then what did you do in the interviews that uh, made it so positive and so comfortable for you that the interviewer said, "This is the person I'm going to make the offer"? Give us some details on some of those experiences, and so the audience can hear.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and this was a spectrum, right? Because in the early unproven days, like I, just like everybody else, had a really high staircase to walk. You have to bring the confidence and conviction. So it's really vital to spend a disproportionate amount of time to prepare, right? Because if you truly believed that you could make anything happen, but only if you put in the work, well, then I believe that that's the answer. It's like as much time as it takes to prepare is going to dictate the success that you bring from the experience.
And a lot of
Um,
people get caught up in that, and they say, "Well, how much time is it that I need to prepare?" And so tell me, when you use the words "a disproportionate amount of time," what does that mean to you? So I think you told me before you had an example of the amount of hours you spent researching for a job or something like that. Am I remembering that correctly?
yeah, and I mean, and again, right, it all depends on like in the early unproven days, especially where I was just really wet behind the ears, and I was hungry and wanting more, and believing that I could go and I could make anything happen. It was really understanding that I would spend hours if it was necessary,
Hmm.
and and this didn't just change as I got better at what I did, because my career path and like trajectory was glass ceiling in a career, go and attempt entrepreneurship, fail, go and apply my skills to a new industry, a new vertical. So I still had a new learning curve. And
Hmm.
even the part of what I tried to do in business were new verticals. And so there was a ton of preparation that went into that to understand the pain points. And this is the market research that can't be skipped. Again, whether it's from an entrepreneurial perspective or trying to prep and get into a new role, it's still the same either way. So it's like if the interview takes you 1 hour, I mean, why not spend 4 hours and really know that you're gonna go in there? Because you have to be confident and have the conviction. If you go in there and you're not in a place where you're comfortable and you're not feeling good about yourself and you don't feel prepared, well, you're not even showing that you want this, first
Hmm.
off.
Hmm.
Because even if you don't know the answer to the question, there's a way that you can position yourself and spin a relevant narrative around your experience and skills that make it impossible still for you to be compared to other candidates.
Hmm.
Because if you show that you know the company better than everybody else, like that is a competitive advantage, even if you don't have the skills. If you tell somebody, think about this, and this is actually a great example. Um, my book coach, so I'm writing a book. My book coach is a phenomenal person. He is he's just one of those people that's so damn nice that you can't imagine. Like it almost feels fake. And I think about myself because I'm like, I'm very upbeat, I'm very bubbly, and I'm very kind, and like, and it's intentional, right? Is I have bad days just like everybody else, but I really try to like not wear that on my sleeve and be the best version. And I believe that by coming from that place, I change my state. Actually, I raise my state into gratitude and kindness, and I try to stay there. And I thought about it, and I was like, there's nothing wrong with him, right? He's not fake. Someone's only fake when you witness them behave out of alignment with everything that they say and you've seen them
Yes,
previously do,
exactly.
right? So if you come in there and you show that you are the most damn prepared, you really want this job, right? And you go in there and you know their mission, you know their values, you know what they've been in, how long they've been in business for, you know what recent wins they've had, you know where they've had setbacks, and you're able to speak to those things. Well, if I'm hiring, I'm going, because I've interviewed and hired a lot of people, I'm going to feel very confident that this person is willing to put in the work to learn things they don't know how to do. And I'm more keen to hire somebody who cares more about the organization and shows that they're willing to put forth resourcefulness and adaptability ahead of time,
Mhm.
because so much other stuff can be trained. You show up there, you've got a smile on, you're feeling confident, you're coming across confident. I mean, that's going to set the stage for everything else. It's going to minimize the nonsensical rambling. It's going to stop you from just telling your life story to the answer to a question that has no relevance whatsoever. People talk to death in interviews, hoping that they'll just steer somebody away from the conversation long enough that we can move on to the next question.
Exactly. So we got a question from one of our participants in the audience who's asking about getting some advice on how to sell yourself when the job you want is not available. So my comment around that, and please share yours, Jordan, is that we've spoken about authenticity, and the answer to the question is it's easier to not have to worry about putting a square peg in a round hole. So if the job is not there, but it's close or it's similar, at the depending on the level of path you are in your career, being authentic and demonstrating who you are and what your skill sets are and how you've done it uh, all this time, even if you're new in your career or in mid-career or later in your career, it doesn't matter. I think the authenticity is what sells. And sometimes we get caught up in the job description and not meeting all the requirements of the job description. So therefore, I'm going to get passed over. I think if you get to the interview stage, they've already recognized that, hey, this person's got a good amount of what I need. They might not be absolute, but it's my chance to show authenticity so that they can recognize what I'm able to do. Jordan, any comments on your end about advice on how to sell yourself?
Yeah, I mean, in the context where the job's not available, it's you're setting up a bigger sale, right? Not every sales cycle is one and done, right? Most of the time, the biggest sales, you know, they can take a month, they can take a few months. You might not sell to somebody. It's all relative to them being in the pain around the solutions you can provide. And so, if the position's not open, well, they're not in pain around the solution, right? Or that you have to offer. Yet at the same time, I can tell you as a founder and a CEO that everybody loves to have a solid bench. No one is going to turn down great talent and have you in the potential wings. My very first career in wireless was the one that I was there for 5 years. I became the head of training and development. But I started at the store level. I was fresh out of high school. I was in college. I actually dropped out of college to continue that and to continue to grow my skills because there was opportunities there for growth. And in that time of going through that experience with them, it's like I was constantly doing the next guy's job while I was doing my job. And that was so to prove that when we're ready for the next step, like who wants it because who's doing it already, who can slide right in with minimal downtime,
Mhm.
right? Same thing goes with building a bench and having people who are really interested and want to walk that walk. The cost of opportunity is massive in any business when you have a position go unfilled. And if you can be already pre-vetted, and in a perfect world, Cliff, tell me if I'm wrong here, we would love when we know we have to let somebody go that we've literally got somebody already in onboarding.
Yep, exactly. But that's
Right.
not going to happen.
But
That's
it might. It
yep.
could in the place of to that questioner, right? If they do a good job and they build the bridge and they leverage social or whatever their means are, right? If you connect with the C-suite, or you connect with the hiring manager, or you talk to the employees at the ground level, if it's a place you want to be, you can make that possible.
Mhm.
You just have to be willing to play the long game. And with my example there, I applied for a Sprint. I was in there. My wife had her phone had gotten water damaged. She wasn't my wife back then, but we've been together since high school, so I'll give you an idea. Back then, she had her phone. It had gotten water damaged in the snow. We went to the store. I had acknowledged that the technician was working on one of the phones. I called out the security screwdriver that he was using. I was like, "Oh, is that a T5 security driver?" He was like, "Yeah, it is. You looking for a job?" He was the store manager, and he needed a technician because he had bad talent in the technician role. The person was, candidly, so long ago, it was a little bit of narcissistic traits. He was difficult to work with. They knew he wasn't the right culture fit. So he was trying to actually actively backfill me. This is probably the best scenario to give you. And I applied, and he was like, "Hey, we definitely want you. Like, personality's a check, like skills are a check." Started the background check process. It got delayed. No reason, just fate. And the holidays were then over at that point. It was January, and they were like, "Hey, we don't need the additional help anymore. Like, and we don't have the documentation to slide this person out yet. Yada yada." So I went and I got another job. They called me 2 months later and were like, "Hey, we're ready for you." And I was like, "Hey, I just got a new gig. Like, I gotta let this play out and see how this goes." Long story short, 3 months later, I wasn't happy with that current gig. I called them back up and I was like, "Hey, you guys still want me?" And I started the next day. So it just goes to show, if you want something and you cultivate that relationship and they feel it and the synergy's there, like, you can make it yours. Just you got to keep showing up and stay relevant.
And I think what's also important, as somebody made a note in the comment, is that the company should also be working as hard as you are to present yourself and your authentic self as they are. So
Mhm.
it's a sale, right? So you're selling yourself, and they've got to also sell the job to you to make sure it's the right job for you. Every sales process is like that, and we've got to make sure that both parties and both sides are able to contribute, and it's a good win-win for the sale. Um, I think what I want to shift to is another question that we've talked about before. Um, People have difficulty, and we talk about it as discoverability. So um, it's hard to get noticed. So let's take a couple of examples. I'm the person who's working in the organization, and I want to transition to another department. I love the organization, I love my work. I need to grow and develop. There's not a lot of growth opportunity in my current department, but I see there's a growth and opportunity in another department. And so, therefore, I have to create my personal brand, sell myself, and therefore move to or be discovered in the other department. Or I'm somebody who's looking for a new job. I'm out of work, or I want to leave my organization, and I create my brand, I create my resume, all of that other kind of stuff. But there's the moment of discoverability, and that is where how do we present ourselves so that we do get discovered, and then we're now on the path to people looking at us and want to be interested in us in our job search. And what is it about our brand that we should do or think about in order to be able to be discovered? Um, I'll liken it to an actual product, which is where you've worked, and that is the beverage industry. So there's a new kind of juice drink or whatever that's come out on the market, and they're going to market that, and that's going to be their way to be discovered. In the working world and looking for a job, what should we be focusing on as people and individuals to be discovered?
And to make sure I'm understanding the frame of the question, we're talking about really by the employer, by a decision
Yes.
maker, by somebody who would be
Yes.
conducting it, right?
Yes. So you in your examples that you've given in the different jobs, you had the opportunity to present yourself, but talk a little bit about how you got to that. How did you get discovered, or how did people recognize that they should be talking to you? Uh,
Mm.
or was that always you presenting yourself to them to say, you need to look at me?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a tough one because realistically, if you don't know somebody, if you don't have an in, then and you don't have and this is right, I'm just kind of razoring so that we keep it more universally applicable for everybody, regardless if they're on the earlier side of their career or more well established and experienced and maybe even considered a market leader. Of course, we know that it's easier to go from a big name company and market yourself, or even be poached or headhunted, right? That type of stuff happens. And so that discoverability is obvious in that you're an expert in what you do. Your track record precedes yourself. Your brand is known. You're effectively known because of the vehicle that you've been driving in, and or what you've been using at your disposal, like social media, for example. So LinkedIn's a primary example for this, because LinkedIn's a weird one where you can have this world of, I'm in a job and I network with other people and I can move from career to career and opportunities open, and it's always a function of networking, right? And with LinkedIn, your reach is so far. Now I leverage LinkedIn for something different, right? I'm building my brand on LinkedIn. I mean, at this clip, I'll probably be over 50,000 followers in just this next week or so. And in breaking that, it's like, there are a lot of people who know me now. If I wanted to go and get a job, it would probably be relatively easy because I've been creating content. People know the things that I actually know because I've put that word out there. And so now you can make the associations between what you know and believe between the things that I've put out there. So that works for me from a standpoint of, even if I want to hire somebody, right? If I put up I'm hiring, and now hey, these are Jordan's ideals. Like, he believes in having a fun environment. He believes in psychological safety. He believes in giving people a career path, and helping them be the best version of themselves and want to come to work, and all of these things that I put extra emphasis and attention on, because I know how much they hurt to not have them, right, as an employee. And so those are at the forefront of my considerations. When you find people like that in your travels as an individual employee looking for the next thing, well, there's ways that you can get someone's attention like that as well, right? The CEO or the decision maker, right, who is on LinkedIn, who is creating content, or posting organizational wins or what have you. If you give them the attention, you will trigger reciprocity. If you give to them first, you will get their attention back to some degree. And if you don't get it, keep doing it. Stay consistent and keep going. Because once they have the opportunity then and they click into you, then it becomes the question of, what is the barrier to deepening their relationship or their knowingness of you? And this is where content comes in. What are you actually posting about? Because this is the thing, right? If you're reposting stuff, if you are commenting on things, like, you have a personal brand, remember this,
Exactly.
right? You are putting it out there.
Yep.
And everyone can see it. And if someone really is looking at it, looking for you, I mean, this is not news to everybody, right? Like, you all have known Facebook and these bigger, like, I feel like LinkedIn is becoming more of a conversational thing here. I know I didn't have a link. I mean, I had an old dusty LinkedIn 10 months ago that had 800 old connections from a preceding business attempt that I had tried to target a specific vertical of people. So like, I was using Facebook, and I knew damn well that, like, when I applied for somewhere, they were going to go and they were going to do their homework. And so like, you have to be mindful. Either your profile should be private if it's not good stuff. And Cliff, this probably talks to a little bit of a different tangent of what you make known about yourself, even in an interview, should be tactical. It should be deliberate, right?
So to just tie a comment that somebody posted about getting past the gatekeeper, or the resume system that LinkedIn automatically applies for you, those kinds of things. I think what you're really saying, or to expand on what you're saying, is that there's the process, which is, you create your resume, you create your LinkedIn profile, your portfolio, or whatever it is. You apply for the job. But beyond that, looking for a job today includes a significant amount of networking. And you brought that to light. And what we see on the human resources and the recruiting side is that there are people who are applying for a job, and there's maybe 50 people applying for the same job. And what the recruiters are doing is they are looking at their LinkedIn profile and their LinkedIn presence, and they through how people are posting and commenting and what type of networks this person's belonging to, they're getting an insight into who this person is and what experience they're able to bring to the table, what their likes are in the career or the field that they're in. So it gives them a window into who this person is before I even let them through the door as the gatekeeper. Number one. Number two, what we also see is a significant amount of networking through LinkedIn. And when I talk about networking, I'm specifically talking about how many people do I know in my network that are connected to the job, the company that I'm looking at, or can connect me to the company I'm looking at. And somebody told me this a long, long time ago when I was starting to look for a job, that this is before social media or anything like that. This was you printing out resumes and cover letters and you putting them in the mail and sending them in. They said in networking, the thousand of salary you want, the increase in the thousands of salary you want has to do with how many people you talk to in a week. And talk to means you have a face to face with them. So back then we had nothing, right? We're picking up on the phone and we're calling up all the people we know and saying, "Hey, I'm interviewing at this job. Do you know anybody there? Can I connect with them? And would they be willing to have just a coffee interview, just a coffee conversation, just to get to know you?" And it works. The number of time back then it worked. The number of times you met with people and you set that number and say, okay, I'm going to meet with this many people because it's going to equal this many times increase in the salary that I want, thousands of dollars. It works. And so to take that old process of how to network and bring it to today with modern technology and LinkedIn allows you the opportunity to go and find all these people that you may not know at all, but through your connections or through other people's connections, they know them. And like you said, how you creating that interaction and that connection outside of the interview process or outside of the job search process can help you. And I think you can say that's something that is that what you said that you utilize that as a way to help you with some of your job searching.
100% nailed it. At the end of the day, the term I think I failed to say, surprisingly, but this whole thing is risk management. Like we're just trying to mitigate risk and understand or up our belief that this person is going to be worth the time, worth the investment, right? Worth the training, worth the cost of opportunity risk if they're not the right fit. I mean, there's some like jarring statistics around what it costs you to churn an employee out, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so hopefully today we've been able to share some key components on how to brand yourself, how to communicate really well in an interview, how to present yourself on social media and use networking as a leverage and a way to mitigate risk. And when we talk about mitigating risk, it's the risk of not getting the job, right? We have to do as much as we can and put in as many hours as we can to reduce the risk of losing that job that we really want. Any last comments you want to share with us, Jordan, before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I think if there's a core takeaway for everybody here, we're not talking about what I hear a lot of people, even in my personal life, friends talk about in there trying to get a new job, which is we're not talking about the pray and spray, apply to 1,000 jobs, right? Deal with the interviews that come back. Like we're talking about the exact opposite. We're talking
Yeah,
about being in what is the life that you want to live, right? What company can you serve best? What meets the non-negotiables that you want out of your life? And then you can actually do the unscalable thing, right? And what I mean by that is put in the outsized amount of time that it takes to nurture and facilitate. And it's not put all your eggs in one basket. I'm not saying, hey, set your sights on one, but like if you
yeah,
have five that you're really super on top of, I mean, that's manageable. That's manageable for you to be identifying who are the gatekeepers, who are the players here, who are the decision makers, who is going to be able to be an advocate in your corner and help to accelerate. And if the job's not available now, it's flattering as well to also approach them and be like, hey, I recognize that you're an industry leader here. And I absolutely love your culture. And I've been following you and studying you. When I went to Northeast Alternatives, a part of knowing that this was a good culture fit for me, as someone who is very on top of and been pushed away from careers based on an incompatibility of care for the employee. I believed that this was going to be a great place for me because the two of the co-owners, Zach Cooper and Kyle Bishop, had come from native roots out of Colorado. They, preceding their leaving, had been voted I forget what the exact number was. I think it was 1 and 2 top places to work in Colorado, 2 years running. So I believed, like, wow, these guys coming over here, they're the experts in their craft. Like, they're clearly passionate. I went down the rabbit hole on these guys, and I became very close friends with one of them. And that was because I worked directly with him, and his partner, by extension, is also a friend, right? So it just goes to show, net, like, do your homework, be intentional. You can do the pray and spray thing, but just expect that you're going to get what you get. And don't get upset about it, right? It's like, or you can do the exact opposite, be super intentional and put in the time, reach out, do the things that take, an outsized amount of effort, and show that you can prove and solve the problems ahead of time. Don't be afraid to take on problems in advance. Whatever you can do to convince them that you are going to be, bar none, the best fit for this role. And if you can convince them of that, the job's yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. Really, really appreciate your comments today, specifically about learning the details of branding, and branding, whether you're branding a product or whether you're branding yourself. So thanks, really appreciate it. Thank you, audience, for participating. Hope you got a lot of great value from today's webinar, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks, everyone.